you sleepyheads, get up, get out of bed, cheer up, cheer up.
Hello and welcome to the Red Robin podcast, powered by Budget Ties Auto Centre and 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗏 Chartered Accountants, the independent Hull Kingston Rovers podcast. Welcome to the 8th episode of the Red Robin podcast weekly. Good Friday saw a rampant Robin side put our relegation threatened neighbours to the sword with a comprehensive 40-0 victory, helping cement our top four spot. And with the World Club champions up next, confidence is soaring. Podcast regular James Purling joins me to share his thoughts on Rovers' demolition derby. And Johnny Lew from the Ramblings of the Same podcast joins me to cast an eye of our Rovers round 9 fixture against St Helens. Before we introduce Johnny, James, we had a few days over the Easter bank holiday to savour that victory, and going into work on Tuesday morning on the back of a rampant Robins victory. It's always a sweet feeling in the city of Hull, isn't it?
It was just magnificent. Still sort of on a cloud nine here. Still can't really believe it happened, but it happened, and yeah, it was just absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and of course we're on YouTube and Facebook live going on to podcast straight after. Matt Brady, Michael Morton joining us so far. Thanks for joining us. Now, usually, regular listeners, viewers to the podcast will know is that we introduce the away fans view or an independent view in the sort of second half of the podcast. But Johnny, the St Helens fan, was so keen to come on and give his opinion on our rivals that he's agreed to do the full podcast. So, Johnny, welcome to the Red Robin podcast. It's great to have you on. Ramblings of the Saints podcast. You're making lots of fans on Twitter, I see, lately.
Everyone's adoring me at the minute. Lots, especially from the black and white part of your city. They adore me at the minute. From all the tweets I've been doing about Hull KR and all the positivity that's been coming from the club the past couple of years, and the demise of Hull FC that is so sad for the rugby league world, but so great from other fans' perspectives, because there's nothing better than a good old fan meltdown, as a lot of people have seen through every fan base.
And Johnny, what surprises me mostly is that, you know, with them having 6 fingers on each hand, that they're able to type a sentence, let alone get an internet connection in West Hull. It's amazing that they're able to combine them two things and still spew out this bile towards you when all you're doing is putting a reasoned argument across about why they are in demise and why they are so shit.
Exactly, mate. Exactly, and I even give them pointers to little errors that the club's making, and they still don't like it. They still just think they're going to wake from this slumber, and there's nothing in that recipe to wake them up from. There's no true love's kiss, no true love kiss that Tony Smith can give. So they're goosed at the minute, and they need a shake up from top to bottom, which is kind of what Hull KR have done for the past few years. Really, they kind of realised the mistakes after they got relegated, and they went, no, we need to start pumping money in. Let's take it off the sale. Let's get more investment. Let's invest in the right areas, both off the field and on the field. They're attracting, NRL talent in 𝗕𝗵𝗿𝗄𝗏 that shouldn't really be playing in Super League at the minute, and it just seems like a club on the up at the minute. So, yeah.
Yeah, and they might not have put the final nail in the coffin, but they certainly put another nail in the coffin of Hull FC. Johnny, while you're on, I'm going to start off with the most boring argument in Super League, and it's about which is the biggest derby. Now, I know for a fact I can't stand that argument because it's boring, it's tedious. Yeah. But what I would say is that each derby or rivalry is unique, and I know, St Helens fans love to spew this fact about a horse race and Lord Derby and all this, which is valid. It's a point. But for me, the most intense rivalry is the City of Hull, because I know for a fact when St Helens fans go to Wigan, they go on organised coaches because of the distance and all stuff like this. When Hull 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗲𝗏 fans go to their games, they're walking side by side. They're going home to the families that was split down the middle. When I finished the derby on Good Friday, I was in the pub. Half the pub was Hull FC, half the pub was Hull 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏. Some people were sat together. And the intensity of that rivalry, for me, says it's not the biggest, but it's the most intense.
Yeah, well, like you kind of said, every derby's unique in that way, and I'm gonna sound a bit like Rio Ferdinand. Like, let's just enjoy them. You know, why have we got to have these arguments all the time of which is the biggest derby? The only reason I put tweets out like that is just because, you know, it gets bites off Hull FC fans. That's pretty much it. That's the only reason I ever tweet about that, and I tweet about the horse racing because it is a fact that that's what happened. But at the end of the day, a rivalry is unique to the person. So for you, it is the biggest rivalry. For me, Saints and Wigan's the biggest rivalry, and there's no two ways that we could even argue that. But I think the biggest one that will put bums on seats, as in eyes on the screen, would be Saints and Wigan, but that's only because of the actual names of the two clubs and the success we've had over the years. I think as a derby in itself, it all depends on the fan bases. You know, I know Widnes fans that think Widnes and Warrington's the biggest rivalry in rugby league. I just don't buy into the boring argument. I just like to enjoy them, and you know, both games are spectacles each time for one reason or another.
Yeah.
So Johnny, I was going to say, James, just before you come in, and then you could come in after me. So, Johnny, when League Express put this list of 10 derbies together, you don't buy into League Express and what they say?
I do not read that publication. I do not have anything to do with that publication because it is a load of tosh, and everything they pump out is just drivel. So I've even muted them on Twitter just because of the amount of clickbait bullshit that they put out. I just can't stand them, and they do articles like that because it gets clicked, and I don't want to give them any of my money. Well, any of their advertising revenue off my click. So that's my opinion on them.
James, go on, mate.
No, I'm just going to say I agree with that. You know, I think we can argue till the cows come home about which is the biggest derby, but you're right. It depends on where you live in. You know, for Johnny, you know, clearly, you know, we're going to say is the biggest one, but for me, you know, the Hull and Rovers, and I'm of a certain vintage where, you know, I remember the early 80s, mid 80s when, you know, the Hull clubs were regularly in finals and sort of filling out stadiums, you know, for finals, and you thought one day it'd never end. But for me, the Raw is intense, and that intensity has never really gone away. I think even when we're in the second division, I remember going to the 𝗕𝗄𝗄𝗏 Park and, you know, we beat them on their patch. When Mike Fletcher soaring above to score a try in the last minute, you know, that there's probably about 6,000 to 7,000 there that day. But, you know, there was still that rivalry. But as you say, John, you know, you go home to, you know, you walk home together, you go to the game together, you walk home together, you go home to split families. You know, we've got it in our own family. You know, went to pick my missus up from my stepson's, and his wife was already home. I think she left after 60 minutes.
What, she stayed that long?
I think she did, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, James, let's focus on the derby now because it was a comprehensive 4-0 victory, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I know the derby, you know, the rivalry, a lot of things are out the window, form goes out the window, etc. But there weren't many people could make a case for Hull FC getting a victory on Good Friday. But credit to Hull FC, the fans, they must have gone in hope that something can happen because we have seen in the derby previously, you know, form does go out the window and the craziest things happen. Good Friday, it didn't. Rovers absolutely dominated. And I suppose if we start off with the starting lineup, nobody predicted that Sam Wood would be lining up on the right wing.
No, you know, I was sort of thought Senior would be in there straight away, you know. But I mean, fair due to Sam, he came in, did a job, had a couple of brain farts, but yeah, he did a job. But you know, like you say, it is a cliche about the form, but going out the window for these Hull derbies. And you know, I must admit, I was a bit going to the state, you know, the ground a bit anxious because I thought, you know, Rovers of old would have gone there and had all the form playing into it against Hull without any form going into it, and they just caved in. but like I say, they did a thoroughly professional job on them. Didn't give them the sniff of even getting a point. Just didn't give them a sniff at all. Even got themselves down to 10 men. 12 men for 10 minutes. Still couldn't score, and they never even like scoring. So, yeah, I think the Rovers team we've got this season is certainly different. Certainly got up to a different level.
Yeah, and Johnny, from an outsider's point of view, it was very difficult to make a case for Hull FC to get a victory. Take away all the facts it's a rivalry, derby, whatever. On paper, it's very difficult to make an argument prior to kick-off on Good Friday.
On paper, it's the difference between black and white, as the old saying would go. But it was like I said before the game that say that 𝗕𝗂𝗚𝗏𝗏 would put at least 24 on him. I think I predicted 28. Margin points wise, I just couldn't see Hull FC even breaking from this rut. I think they don't have the character for it in their squad to bounce back. They're playing at home, and for some reason, the home that used to be a fortress is now just like anyone's going over there and putting points on them. And it's like, I think me and Andrew Foster did a podcast, and it was something like they've had more points they've lost by more than 50 points at home in the last 3 years, more than they had in the last 60 or something ridiculous like that. Like, something's going on at that club, and I just couldn't see it. And when you put them on paper together, you've got 𝗕𝗂𝗗𝗏𝗔𝗍, 𝗕𝗵𝗿𝗄𝗏, who, like I said before, he's got no right to be in Super League. And just man for man, there's not many Hull FC players that have taken over Hull KR apart from Jake Clifford, but even he can't do anything in this Hull FC side. It's like it's sapped all the energy out of every single player. There's that toxicity, and when a club's that rotten, there's no way of them getting a result. And I just kept putting it and saying it. It's like you say, the form guy goes out the window, but it can only go so far. It's up to the characters of the players, and I just don't think that club has any real character about it, which is unfortunate because that's what Hull FC always used to have.
Well, no, Johnny, it's not unfortunate. It's welcome, and it's long may it continue. So, it's been going on for a long time, and the longer it does go on, the happier we'll be. But James, when we look at character, we talk about big players. Johnny's already mentioned 𝗕𝗵𝗿𝗏𝗏𝗏. Ryan Hall got the first try. I mean, Michael Lewis did absolutely fantastic, didn't he, to get that pass out to Ryan Hall for Ryan Hall for the easiest try he's probably ever going to score. But Michael Lewis to have 3 men on him to scramble that pass out.
It does. I think we've said it before on this podcast that he's got a lot of strength for a scrum half, and it certainly showed it on Friday. And I think he's one player who I think is getting better and better every game. I think when the first couple of games at the start of the season, he probably wasn't hitting the heights we'd come to expect from him towards last season. But I think now, and I think on Friday, and I watched the game back afterwards, and I don't think I really appreciated at the time what a cracking game he had on Friday. Only when you watch it back, it was just in everything. And like I say, that pass to get out to Ryan Hall was just unbelievable, really.
Yeah. And Johnny, I mean, obviously you've seen young halfbacks do well. You look at Lewis Dodds, Michael. I know a lot of Saints fans are almost opening their arms.
I cannot say it enough. Thank you very much for developing Johnny Lomax's replacement. He's doing a superb job. Johnny's 33 this year, so I think retirement will be coming up close in the next couple of years. So I'd love to see Mickey Lewis come and play 6 or 7 if Dodd leaves over to Australia. I think he is one of England's top talents. I've said it for the past couple of years, and I know his dad's quite close with Paul 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, so hopefully we've got a little agent there.
I'll be messaging his dad, to be fair. If that's the case, I'll be messaging him.
I don't know. That's just rumours going around the Saints speckies. I don't know how true it is. I think they might have played golf once, maybe, but No, I don't know how true that is, but hopefully we can get a deal done because he is a top talent, and I think with the England international coming up at the end of the month, they'll be wanting to try out new names because obviously we've got a bit of an aging international squad, and I think he should be at least in with a shout of potentially making the extended squad, if not maybe even making the starting 7 spot his own with George Williams, and I just think that the world's his oyster, honestly. If he doesn't take the step up to like a club like Saints with our sort of history and that, I think the NRL will come knocking pretty soon because I cannot praise that kid enough. He is sensational.
I won't pick you up on it, Johnny. I know you said a step up to a club like Saints, but I won't pick you up on that, so we'll dismiss that. Let's go to 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗏𝗂𝗁𝗔 try against Hull FC. I mean, Jordan Abdul, renowned kicker, he's absolutely getting smoke blown up his ass everywhere he goes for his kicks. We saw it against Leeds Rhinos, James. Yeah. He puts up a massive bomb. Jamie Shaw, who should have probably been nowhere near that game on Friday, he's playing because of 𝗕𝗂𝗁𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍 injury. James Shaw comes in, fucks up again. It's not the first time, although he has put us to the sword on a number of occasions. So, it's good to what goes around comes around. But puts the eye bomb in, he mucks up, and then we go on. 𝗕𝗂𝗡𝗏𝗧 throws that dummy. I mean, nobody's really mentioned that dummy that 𝗕𝗂𝗡𝗏𝗧 threw out. Outrageous.
It was outrageous. Who was he basically put somebody into the second into
I think it was Griffin.
didn't he?
I think
Griffin.
Yeah, I think absolutely sent him in to no man's land. Goes over for the try, and to be fair, at the start of the game, James, going into a derby like this, going into an important game, when you're bringing back players like Sean Kenny-Dowell and Tom 𝗕𝗂𝗡𝗏𝗧, 2 experienced pros. Let's not forget 𝗕𝗂𝗡𝗏𝗏𝗧 would have been in a grand final last year if he didn't get injured. Cool as a cucumber, throws a dummy, goes in for a try, and no more than he's deserved, probably, James, because of his form during the course of the season so far.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think he's another player who's just getting better and better every week. And it's not, I don't think it's really been sort of highlighted enough, but for me, it's just the defensive solidity he brings to that right edge. Our right edge was has been the stuff of nightmares for years. Fine on the left, with Hall and Lynette and Kenny-Dowell, but the right edge has just been like a leaky sieve. And now we've got Batchelor out there, we've got 𝗕𝗂𝗡𝗏𝗏𝗧 out there, and you just know nobody's going to get through that side. And it's just great to see. We're just solid defensively from across the whole field, and I think 𝗕𝗂𝗡𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Batchelor got to take a lot of credit for that. But actually, it's probably, I think it's obviously Brett Delaney and the structures that he's putting in place. That's sort of helping to do that as well. So no, I think 𝗕𝗂𝗡𝗏𝗏𝗏 is certainly getting better and better every week, and just showing the class player that we know we're expecting. And as Johnny said, considering his age, we've got no right to have him playing for us. In the Super League, he could easily do a decent job for a top NRL team.
You've mentioned his defensive game. That was what he was renowned for over in Australia, was his defensive game, and also his attitude. Yeah. His attitude over there is phenomenal. I think it was 18 months ago, I mentioned on one of my podcasts, his brother, it was either his brother or a very close family member died, and they mentioned it on commentary, and the next day they had a really big game, and obviously the coach at the time, he said, it's okay, we'll leave you out the squad, and he went, no, I want to play, he wants me to, he'll want me to play. Played and scored, and I think they ended up going on to win. But I remember him scoring, and next thing he pointed up to the heavens, and that to me was just it shows the character of the bloke and how much he loves playing rugby league and how much it means to him and his family. Yeah. And I think, it's like I said, if it weren't for that hamstring injury last year in the first week of the finals against Penrith, he'd have been playing against Penrith in the grand final. He is an NRL quality player. He turned down multiple NRL offers, including an extension at Para, because he wanted a break from Australia, and you guys match the money. So it was a simple transfer decision for him, and I think him as a player is an absolute asset. And you have Eddie Hearn talking about big characters, and we can't name one rugby league player. He is someone for me that should be the flagship of our sport. The likes of him, even Lachlan Coote, who's been there, done it, won everything over in Australia and over here. Then you've got the likes of Jack Wellesby, a young English character, young English person. You've got so many personalities that can be these flagship people, and 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗂𝗁𝗔 is right up there because he's got the ability to do it, and he's got the character, charisma, and he's just an all-round top person, top professional. I adore him. I genuinely do. Even though he played for Para and I follow Penrith, he was still a player that I always admired and respected, and I was amazed when it got announced.
And we're in an era now where everybody wants to call things early. I'm going to fall into my own trap, James, but I wouldn't be surprised if he falls into the category of Bengali, Clint Newton, Bobby Blair, Kane Lynette, 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗂𝗁𝗔, quality Aussie imports who have come over, earned a good living, but also repaid us in buckets. And I think he's going to fall into that category.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think one thing that sums up all those guys you mentioned is professional. They've come on with a professional attitude, want to, prove the worth, and do a job, and they're doing it. And 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗧 certainly will be up there as well. No doubt about it.
And then following 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗧's penalty on Good Friday, Lachlan Coote slots over another 2 points, 14-0. Big talking point this week, though, is the match review panel. James Batchelor, he paid the price for a tackle on Clifford. Clifford obviously not happy with his tackle. He receives a sin binning, goes off for 10 minutes. No more points scored in the first half. But let's touch on that point of the match review panel and sin binnings and etc. James, when he first saw that tackle, to be fair, when you're in the stands, you've had a beer, you're high on the points, you're not really analysing the game as much as you might do at home behind the TV screen, but it seemed fairly innocuous. When I watched it back when I got home, it seemed a little bit innocuous. John Wells on commentary said, well, players have got a responsibility to care for each other, to make sure that the technique's correct. I get it. They are paid professionals, so there's a responsibility there. But it still doesn't quite sit right for me, the penalty. And Willie Peters, in his pre-match conference, said, really, there was a little bit in there for us to make an appeal, but the way that it's going at the moment, what's the point?
What's the point? No, I agree. I mean, at the time, I just saw what's going on. And I think, for me, I don't think Jack Smith was even going to penalise it until Clifford spat his dummy out and started ranting and raving. And it's only when he looked at it back on the screen that I said, actually, might be something in it. But again, I've looked at it a number of times and I cannot see what was wrong with it. What was Batch supposed to do? He was tackling a player, and unfortunately got his feet caught underneath him. There's nothing malicious in it. It was a tackle that you'll see 20, 30 times in a game, and nothing ever comes of those.
Well, James, I know Johnny's a rugby league aficionado, and he's going to tell us now what was wrong with that tackle.
Well, there's differences between the James Batchelor one, the Morgan Smithies one, and the Morgan Knowles one that all got charged. But there was a couple in the NRL that were similar to James Batchelor's. There was one last week, and James Graham blew up about it. I don't know if you've seen it in commentary on his radio thing, and he was going on about it, and he's like, that's not a hip drop. And basically it's where the player comes in, and the tackle that James Batchelor's done is he's hit him face on, but as the momentum of the attacker's gone forward, he's then wrapped round to drag him round and then put all of his weight on that knee, which increases the higher risk of knee injuries that become more common, especially in the NRL recently, with penalising them and suspensions. So that's kind of why you got a one-match ban. But I don't agree with the James Bachelor one. I keep going to say Joe Bachelor, James Bachelor one, because of that. It's the momentum of the attacker that's brought him round that side rather than him.
Yeah, well, that's what got me. There was nothing for me. There was nothing that Bachelor was doing that was forcing that that situation.
Yeah, it's more. Yeah, it was more the momentum of the tackle, but the likes of the Smithies one, where he's coming from behind, and that's got I think that got a 1 match ban as well, didn't it? The Smithies tackle, or did he get a fine? I can't remember what he got. And then you've got the Morgan Knowles one, where it's a 3-man tackle, and as the third man comes in, Knowles has put his weight onto the knee as the tackler's twisting. That then increases the risk of injury to that knee, which obviously he has done his ACL. All these hip drop tackles kind of do that. So you've got 3 different incidences, but they're all charged with the same offence. So for me, if you want to eradicate that tackle and that tackling technique to stop these knee injuries, every single tackle that's charged as a hip drop tackle should be punished in the exact same way. Bar if, in James Batchelor's case, it's the attacker's momentum that's made the defender do it. If it's the one like Smithies where he's chosen to go in at the knees, if it's one like Morgan Knowles where, although it's not intentional, there is that element to it, them sort of tackles should be punished the same. I really don't see how they can give the likes of Morgan Knowles a 5-match ban when the guidelines say 2 to 3 because of the extent of someone's injury, when all the tackles have the same risk of that injury occurring. Just because someone's got that injury doesn't mean the risk isn't higher or lower. The risk is the exact same. So the problems with the inconsistencies with the match review panel is that if you have previous for the same tackling technique, then that's fair enough, increase the bans, but you have to increase the grade on top of that. And that's the problem with the match review panel at the minute, is the inconsistencies around the board with sort of the guidelines, what they're doing, and they just seem to pick it out of the hat. And that's the problem.
I do think as well, Johnny, you're getting into choppy waters when you're starting to give bans on the basis of a player's injury, because also what's not taken into context is the injury record of the player who's been tackled.
Exactly. How many knee injuries did Cooper get? Yeah, I think Cooper's had about 3 knee reconstructions before this, so you just add all this.
I mean that giving Morgan Knowles was giving him 5 games when the tariff was 2 to 3 was just bonkers, and I think it was purely on the basis that he had got Cooper did his ACL, and I think the RFL were trying to make an example of Knowles.
But also the real irony in that as well is that the opposition get no benefit to that ban.
Yeah.
So the player gets punished for it on the severity of the injury to the player.
And also if they're taking consideration into injuries and games missed by the player, that's had that tackle on them, why has Ghaz O'Brien got taken out 7 minutes in? Jake Wardle got 10 minutes in the bin, no match suspended, and yet he's missed 73 minutes of one match and then another match the week later because of that injury. So if you're then saying, the sin been insufficient, we'll give you a £250 fine, where's that then? So he then gets to play in the derby and ended up putting in a really good performance in the derby. So it's an absolute farce, and the way the match review panel is kind of dishing these out, it's like you say, they're getting into choppy waters, because you can't then do ban one person because of the extent of an injury, and yet the risk is the exact same. That's why I said, I was like, if you're going to do bans for that, it's got to be the same across the board. So the Morgan Knowles, he gets 3 matches, Smithies get 3 matches, and the only thing that differs then is the fine or repeat offenders. So as soon as you do it again, right, that's then increased, because there's no way you can have a fair system based on that. And then you have Wigan fans and Leeds fans tweeting about Morgan Knowles' disciplinary record. He's been charged 9 times in the past, I think, what, 18 months or something, which isn't great. But then you consider 2 of them got appealed, 2 of them were for late hits. You know, none of them were for this hit drop tackle. And then you have 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗧 putting that video out online, which shows that it is obviously a technique that he's used before. So it's all just been like, it just seems to me like they've picked out 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗧. They haven't actually considered the impact on the game as a whole with this, because you've set a precedent now.
To be fair, Johnny, you want to see what James has been charged with, and what he's never been found guilty of it. So don't mean he's a bad lad. So, you know, so it's all in concept. But I think, you know what, he's not my favourite commentator, but Bill Arthur made a good point. And I think you've always got to rewind back to the fan in the stand. And he basically said, what is 𝗕𝗄𝗄𝗧 supposed to do? He's making a genuine attempt to tackle the man. He wasn't maliciously going in, which was quite ironic, because only a few moments later, you saw 𝗧𝗊𝗍𝗍 go in and make a tackle. His saving graces, he went on the thigh. He didn't go below the knee. But many people would have looked at that, and I saw Phil Clark screaming blue murder, saying, well, why shouldn't 𝗧𝗊𝗍𝗍 go off? But relay it back to the fan in the stand, and the fan in the stand doesn't always read the guidelines for bannings and all this kind of thing. It's genuinely what people see and what we perceive. Yeah. And I think we're getting muddled up and mixed up in all this, trying to wear this narrative of, well, this player meant this is the result, this should be banned on this. And we need to maybe go to a bit more of a simplified system for it, because many people left scratching their heads at why X player gets this. We saw it with Sean Kenny-Dowell, laid a hand on a player, got a 4-match ban. We saw Dudson lay a punch on somebody laying prone on the floor. He got 1 game more in his ban. And you're going, well, hang on. If you could lay a punch on someone, Sean Kenny-Dowell, you might as well have gone for it then. It's just, there doesn't seem to be any consistency or really much common sense going on. I don't know, Johnny. What are we going to do? Everything gets laid on IMG's door now. IMG will sort it out. I don't think they can sort this out.
I don't think IMG can sort a lot of the problems out in rugby league, because them at the top will still have control. And I've said this multiple times. I have no faith whatsoever in the RFL. And the problem is they have the final say in everything. So you've got a company there that's on a profit scheme, basically. They need it to make money. And the people in charge of the suggestions are then having to get it approved by people who have famously lost the sport money over generations, who have famously developed the sport null and void outside the M62, really. We developed it a bit in London. Look at how many amateur clubs have disappeared in London. We get all this lottery funding. Where's it all gone? It's gone into the Northwest and Yorkshire. That lottery funding should go a little bit into them areas, granted, but the bulk of it should be going into the amateur game down south, especially now with rugby union and the way it is at the minute. This is what's so frustrating being a rugby league fan, is these problems like the judiciary panel are all being done and overseen by people from the RFL, and also people who've played the game in the past, but they have no real, I don't think they have perception on like you say, with the consistency. Like, if you're being consistent, them guidelines have to be followed, and they're going off them guidelines. And when they go off them guidelines, that is where everything gets screwed over, because, like you say, the fan in the stands goes, well, why has that happened? Why has Morgan Knowles got an extension when the risk to injury is the exact same on the Morgan Smithies tackle? It's just kind of bonkers at the minute, and who does sort it out? Because I don't think IMG can. I think this has got to be a whole overhaul system. Whether you bring in, I know they have each tribunal has like a former solicitor or a judge and whatever. You've got Robert Hicks there. He's a solicitor. He was also a former match referee. You've got a man who ticks both them boxes. Why isn't he in charge of the judiciary panel? So you have people like that.
Fucking hell, Johnny. I got you on to talk about against Rovers, and you wanted to come on and talk about FC. Now we're starting on the podcast about reshaping Rugby League. I am.
Well, now you know why my podcast is called The Ramblings of a Saint.
Let's bring it back, James. James Batchelor serves his sin bin. He comes back on 47 minutes in. Boom, John Abdul, little short pass. Batchelor goes in for the easiest try he'll ever score. And after being 14-0 up at half-time, that takes us to 20-0 with Coote getting the conversion. And at 20-0, 47 minutes in, you're feeling it's game over, aren't you there?
You are, yeah. You're just thinking, yeah. You're now starting to think how many they're going to get. Because, like I say, that batch try was just so easy. We were sat in the west stand, and it just looked like you could have a double-decker bus through that gap. It was just that big. And it's a beautiful pass from Abdul. And, that was it, game, set and match.
And I think also, I mean, let's be honest, Clifford going off is massive. 20-0, you're going, how are they going to get back into this? And they did just look at 6s and 7s, easy knock-ons. Before, though, we go on and talk about some other tries. Jordan Abdul took in drop goals. Dropouts? What were they?
we had a bit of a 10-minute brain fart phase, didn't we, there? I mean, like you say, 2 minutes before half-time, you're 14-0 up, you're down to 12 men, you get a dropout, what do? Logic says you bang it as far downfield as possible. You don't go for a short kick-off. Yeah, I don't know what the hell was going on there, but hopefully...
Johnny, you get away with it once, you don't get away with it twice.
Hopefully we told him not to do it ever again.
No. You ever seen a team do 2 dropouts identical and fail like Rovers did with Jordan Abdul?
Well, you see it a couple of times in the NRL, to be fair, because they love a short kick-off, but short dropout even. But it's very rare. And
look, thankfully for Rovers, we got away with it because it didn't cost us. And I mean, it probably shows you how shit they are that they couldn't actually capitalise on 2 glorious opportunities to have 6 drives at our try line and still not get a try on the back of them dropouts. Tries after that, James, Lachlan Coote goes in, Ryan Hall, Mikey Lewis, Ryan Hall. I mean, it was a procession of glorious tries, James, after that, wasn't it? I mean, total dominance, and I think we need to give special praise to a very special player. Ryan Hall, he got 3 Man of Steel points. He was in the team of the week. He got 3 tries, 2 assists, 250 metres, 29 carries, 6 tackle busts. I mean, Ryan Hall, Jesus Christ, James, for a player who's supposed to be coming to the end of his career, he looks like somebody who's probably in the prime of his career.
It does. I mean, he's not bad for an old fat lad, is he? Really? But no, I mean, it was just on a different level, and I think it just shows that if you look after yourself, you can just carry on playing for as long as your body lets you. And he's just, he's signed another extension, so he'll have been with us now for 4 years, and it's just his level just hasn't dropped in that time he's been with us. And for me, although he got 3 tries, I think there was that pass inside to Coote that was just out as well. He could easily have gone and done it himself, but no, he sort of drew the defender in, just looped the pass over for Coote to go unopposed, and it was just like a cavalry charge on that second half down that left-hand edge. I mean, I don't think was it McIntosh or Swift and 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗲𝗲𝗁 down that side. I think they'll be having nightmares about just seeing red and white coming streaming towards them, because they just, every time they got the ball, just shifted it to the left, they just ripped them to shreds, and it was absolutely fantastic to see.
Yeah, and Johnny, I mean, you'll have seen it firsthand, and you've seen it for years and years. When we talk about culture and professionalism, you mentioned 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗏, what he brings from the NRL. We've got, players like Sean Kenny-Dowell, Ryan Hall, about culture, about professionalism, about how to play the game. There's not many players in Super League who can say that they're doing what he's doing, because he's when he came over from Sydney Roosters, many people thought he was a spent force. He's really reimagined his game, and the fact that he's the poster boy, I think, for the mid-season international against France, tells you where his standing is, probably with Sean Wayne at the moment.
Yeah, it probably does. It's a strange one with Ryan Hall because he went over to Australia and he was so injury prone. I think in them 2 years he played like 13 games, and like I'm not gonna lie, I wrote him off when he signed for you guys. Even though I think he was only like 29 or 28 when he signed for you. He was still like,
No, 31, 30, 31.
Right.
oh sorry, yeah, he was 29 when he went over, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So like he was 31. He'd just come back from, well, back end of the season he played, but he had a knee reconstruction, I think, over there, and it was like he lost most of his pace. But like you said, he's changed his game, a bit like Josh Charnley has for Lee. The way he plays now, it's very much on about size and pace and power rather than pace. I know, I like you said, that pass inside to Coote rather than the old Ryan Hall, I think, would have gone for it. I think that's also the maturity of him. I think him at Leeds would have probably gone for it down the line and tried to beat the man for pace, but he's kind of, like you say, developed his game and developed his head, and his awareness seemed to be very, very good, and also he's brought that winning culture as well. He won, everything there is to win over here with Leeds, and I think that really helps. And obviously you've got Danny Maguire behind the scenes as well that also helps that culture, and I think that was kind of the start of that culture was with Danny Maguire, and then now obviously with Ryan Hall, it's great to see him back at his best as well, because when he is a player that you kind of, like you say, he is a poster boy of the game. So I think especially that England team.
And I've got no doubt as well, he only signed that 1-year contract extension because he's chasing down Danny Maguire's try-scoring record.
I think he's a bit too far off that, but he is
Hey,
chasing.
well, he could be playing till 40. He's definitely, I reckon he's definitely to take that down. But, one thing as well, James, what I thought was really important during the game, and it's been a big criticism of Rovers, I think we're fed in 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗴𝗲𝗏 for most missed conversions, but the quality of 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗆𝗀's kicks and the fact that he kept kicking them just put that extra pressure on LFC to get the extra points. And he only missed one kick in the whole game. And kicking has been such a problem for Rovers throughout the season, James. But he absolutely nailed them kicks. And I think that was a telling, a ringing endorsement of really Rovers' dominance. The fact that his kicking helped just keep the pressure on them throughout the game.
It did. It just, like I say, just putting that extra gap between us and making it even more harder to come for them to come back. But also the other side of it is, every 2 points he gets improves the points difference, and that's going to become critical, I think, towards get towards the end of the season. That middle of the table is going to be very tight between several clubs, and points difference is going to come into it. But certainly, and getting those kicks is going to be helpful. Going to be great, helpful.
Yeah, and Johnny, it'd be remiss of me to say without you being on the podcast. I'm sure you put a tweet out. I don't know what the tweet was.
Yeah.
And you put @𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗃.
I just miss him.
Were gutted, weren't they, when he left?
He was gutted when he left.
Yeah, Johnny, do you know what? We've seen glimpses of what he can do in a Rovers shirt. I think this spell he's had in the opening few games of the season is what we expected him to be throughout his full course. Yeah. And if he carries on like he is this season, there's talk of him retiring at the end of the season. This could be his swan song. But I'm sure he's a player that you'd probably welcome back at Saints.
Well, the tweet you questioning was a viral tweet by a girl who just put "I miss him," obviously on about her ex or whatever, and everyone was putting up pictures of like the favourite players, and Lachlan Coote is one of my favourite all-time players for Saints. Not just because he started his career at Penrith, but also he's just a person that he's just a nice bloke as well, and he's so good on the pitch. What he did for Saints is change the game from the Ben Barber show to the St Helens show. He put St Helens first, rather than the likes of Benny Barber, who was the showman. He could do everything and anything. Coote was a team player. is a team player. He always has been. He's got the playmaking abilities of Barber, but without sort of his style of play. His infield kicking as well as off the tee was so vital to us. It's something that Saints have lacked ever since he left. Is the kicking boot of him, because then I know you've got Jordan Abdul, but his in-game kicking for us was a huge part of them title wins and the Challenge Cup win in the end. He's a phenomenal player and character, and I really do miss him. I think the Saints only offered him a 1-year deal and less money than the Rovers, but Rovers offered him more money and a 2-year deal. He even went to Saints. Look, he went, give me 2 years, I'll accept your contract. And Saints went, look, we can't hinder the development of 𝗬𝗲𝗄𝗏. So that's kind of the reason you got him, it was the technicality of years. He loves our club, we love him. But he loves Rovers just as much, because everywhere he goes to, he puts his heart into. And I think that's why you've got to kind of cherish players like him, because he will do everything for your club. Everywhere he's gone, Penrith, North Queensland, Saints, he's always put the club first before himself. And I think that's just vital to him.
Yeah. And James, I think if Jordan Abdul kicks with a sledgehammer, I suppose, I don't know, does Coop kick with a feather foot? Because he's got that bit of class, he's just got that bit more guile, hasn't he, with his kicks in an attacking play.
Yeah, they just seem so effortless, don't they? So, like I say, whereas Abdul, it's all about putting the fear of God into the defender with the height he gets on his. I think Coots are a lot more subtle and more. I think putting the pressure on the opposition in a different way, just really forcing them to think about where it's going to go and how they're going to run it out, which obviously creates its own pressure and its own. It is different pressures to something that Abdul's doing. So I think with both Coot and Abdul, and obviously Lewis as well, I think we've got three very potent strike forces.
Yeah, Jordan Abdul's kicking game reminds me of obviously I was too young at the time, but the Bobby's Bombs. It seems to me like Jordan Abdul just does it every single week for fun, and it really does change it.
Remember them?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
So it kind of just like that infamous final, and it just seems like Abdul does it every week, just to torment the defenders.
I think it was a real good point as well. Now is that it's not actually Jordan Abdul's kicking now. He's got a psychological edge.
It's the thought of it,
anyone he comes up against. Yeah. He only has to nail 1 or 2 kicks before the rest of the team start thinking, shit, every kick he's going to do now is going to be that. And he's almost playing a psychological battle. Whether that is what he's actually doing or whether that's just how it manifests itself. Yeah.
But it seems to wear, though, doesn't it? I mean, obviously, it sort of gave Leeds nightmares. And you can probably argue that kick he put in, that shawl cocked up on Friday, was really the catalyst for Hull's implosion.
Yeah, it was. And James, I mean, we're going to round up now because it was a fantastic day, fantastic result. I just want to touch on it very shortly because I thought it was an important thing, and it's all this bottle throwing, pint throwing. I don't know if Johnny's experienced it at Wigan. I've seen at gigs, going to see bands and stuff. I didn't like it then because I have to wear a fucking rain jacket to go to a gig indoors. I was stood with our lass. She got covered in a bit of beer. Yeah. I won't take my son to the derby because for the same reason, if he got covered in a pint of lager, I wouldn't be happy. And it just seems to be something that's creeping into the game a bit more and more. And when we tell people this is a family game, and I put that in inverted commas, it's not a family game when people are quite happy to chuck beer, chuck lager, albeit in celebration. It wasn't in anger, but it just seems to be something that's creeping into our game, and it needs eradicating from our fan base, and it needs eradicating from rugby league in general.
Yeah,
needs eradicating from all aspects.
Yeah, totally agree. I just can't get it. If you can spend afford to spend over £5 on a pint, why would you want to chuck it? It just beggars belief. And we were in the West Upper and we were getting showered by it. So that they've just been indiscriminate. It just sickens it and just put a bit of a dampener on the day. Literally, yeah. But I'd rather not come and have a stinking a beer and tell the missus think I've gone down the pub instead of watching the game.
Yeah. All I can think of is that Carling's that shit people would be that ready to throw it rather than drink it.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Probably.
that's a side note. But hopefully, if anyone's listening to this and they did chuck a pint,
stay
just
away.
Before you do it next time, think about it, because you're not chucking it over yourself. You're chucking it over somebody else. And somebody.
Yeah, well, the RFL are going to investigate it, aren't they? The RFL are going to investigate it.
Well, do you know what, James? I think Rovers have got a suspended fine.
That's what I mean. So they've got a suspended fine over them already for something that happened before. So they're going to get fined. That means that's less money that they can spend on the team. So if you think it's great to throw a bottle at the game, think about that.
Yeah, exactly. Johnny, hopefully Saints fans won't be chucking pants and bottles on Friday night because they won't have anything to celebrate. It's been a bit of an indifferent season, hasn't it, for St Helens? Do you know what? I absolutely loved watching the World Club Cup. I thought it was a fantastic game. The game was absolutely brilliant. The easy thing to say is they'll play that game and Saints will have a hangover. To the credit, they came back from that. They beat Castleford, but they've not really hit the straps yet, have they?
Hit the straps, mate. That's an understatement. It's so frustrating at the minute, and I kind of did a whole podcast on it on my own channel the other day, just because I have to air my frustrations at the fans too, because we are such a self-entitled bunch. You see it online, and it's becoming a bit of a pain at the minute. But it's teaming issues, mate. You've got a brand new coaching setup. People calling for 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗏𝗂𝗏 after 5 games. And it's like, imagine if we got rid because of your utter idiocy, because there's no other word for it.
And you only have to see what him and Wayne Bennett are doing at the moment.
Exactly, mate.
Yeah.
You only have to see what he did with Tonga, before he even joined Saints. And it's like that with Welland. You've got a whole new... You got Fraser New, you've got Talbot, you've got Paul Wellens, you've got a brand new assistant and coach. You've got to implement changes, and you've got to do that over time. And that's the saving grace for Wolf was that COVID happened and he could implement all these changes in basically another off season, wasn't it, really? So I think with Paul Wellens, he's already gone there. He's won the World Club Challenge. He's earned the right to, tweak his team how he wants to, and it's up to us to trust the process. We've also had a lot of poor discipline that's really, really hit us. But in attack, it's not the best, and our defensive structures changed completely. There's no intensity anymore since that Leeds game, when there was the late hits, there was the sin binnings and red cards for Hull. It's like since then we've last year and the year before, Saints were in the attacking line before the balls even come out of the ruck. You know what I mean? And nowadays, the past few games anyway, it's been like the attackers have made like 6-7 meters before that contact's hit. So teams are getting easy yards, but because of our scrambling defence, and it is such a good scrambling defence, we're managing to keep the points tallies low. So it's a strange season, but we've just got to put up with it in a minute and persevere, I think.
Yeah, 1-4, lost 3, 5th in the table. I mean, context, you played 1 game less than Rovers and you're only 2 points behind Rovers. So, you've got to factor that in. We've talked about Morgan Knowles being banned. I think, James, though, big stat is we haven't beat Saints for 13 games. You have to go back to 2015 when we beat them 24 points to 22 at home. I mean, it's a terrible record, isn't it?
It is, because I think it's quite ironic that I think in the few years up to that 2015 season, I think we'd actually got quite a good record against them, particularly at home. I think they went about 5 seasons where we beat them every year, and then since then, it's just. But records are there to be broken, aren't they? It's going to end sometime. I think looking at where Saints are now and the sort of, I think the players they're going to have out on Friday night. And I think if we're going to beat them, it's probably this week's as good a time as any, I think.
Yeah, and let's go on to that squad news then. So to be fair, both teams are really suffering a little bit with players missing for either injury or suspension. For Rovers, the big news is that no Sam Wood, a player who's performed admirably over the last few weeks in a variety of positions. He's not been risked. 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝗏𝗂𝗂𝗔𝗰𝗋𝗄𝗧, 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝗏𝗂𝗏𝗂𝗏, he comes back in. Corey Hall's named in the squad for the very first time this season. And then for St Helens, 𝗦𝗢𝗖𝗜𝗔𝗟𝗏, 𝗔𝗰𝗋𝗄𝗏 they're all missing. Called up are Baxter, Hill, Buckley. Is it Boynes?
Broynes.
Boynes. Are we at a point, Johnny, where the Saints Helens 18 almost picks itself now? Is the team almost that predictable for Friday?
Mate, absolutely not. I put a tweet out before. I can't remember what it said, but I think it's forwards roulette at the minute. Our strongest asset's been our forwards for the past few years, and right now we're missing Sirenin, 𝗦𝗢𝗖𝗜𝗍𝗏, like you say. So it's whether you go with me personally. I'd have 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗃 starting, and then potentially have the likes of Wingfield at 13, Sam Royal starting with Bell, Wingfield, and Royal, with 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗃, Iggy, and then it's prop forwards. It's whether you go with the likes of Delaney starting, a young 19-year-old lad, or whether you go with the likes of Buckley to make only his second appearance for Saints. It's weird. Or do you put Conrad Hurrell in at second row and put 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗏𝗏𝗏 in at centre? And then, I think there's many different ways. And honestly, this squad I really can't predict. I think you kind of got to go with the positions you've got. And I'd rather see an academy lad come in that's played that position, that is his normal position, rather than shifting Hurrell there. But then you lose impact off the bench. So it's a real selection headache, I think, for the team, for Wellens and Fraser-New to make. But yeah, I'd really like to see 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 start this game. I think we need pace out at 9, because our ruck speed, although Roby's been superb, I think our ruck speed at the minute's really lacking. So I think someone with a bit of pace in 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 can kind of utilise that, and get us some metres up the pitch as well. Because, you've seen it when he came on at Wigan, we managed to make them breaks, and I really feel like we need a bit of pace out the ruck. He changed the game at Wakefield for us, and I know Wakefield aren't exactly the best team to use it as an example to rack up points, but I'd really like to see him start, and I'd like to see 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗏 please put on a show. I think he's been very quiet, considering last year he had a superb season and should have really been in the dream team. So I'd like to see him have a real belter of a game. Sirenen's a massive loss.
And James, I'll get Johnny's opinion on this, but from outsiders looking in, like we're saying, it's normally it'd be one player injured. Right, don't worry about it. Next one off the conveyor belt just steps up. Where it seems, James, at the moment there's a bit of adversity in the team selection, and James, do you think this is maybe our best opportunity to get a result against St Helens? We'll go on to Rovers' injuries, suspensions, etc., because there's a lot of disruption in our camp. But maybe this could be the best time to play St Helens.
I think it is. And say having so many changes is bound to disrupt them. But then, about the same thing, you have to realise that if anybody is ever whoever pulls on a Saints chair has come through a system, come through processes, and you know they're going to be pretty good. They're going to put 100% in. And just like it was like last year when they played, basically played the full academy against Castleford, and just like nearly beat them really, because they've got that quality player. They've always got that quality player coming through. So I think yes, they have got adversity, and it is probably the best chance Rovers have got to beat them since 2015. But by the same token, I think Rovers still needs to be playing their top game to win, really.
Yeah, and Johnny, I suppose the same question to you almost. That normally you'd be used to a conveyor belt of talent. Boom, boom, boom. So and so's out. Put so and so in, and you won't worry about it. Where there just seems to be a bit more anxiety around the Saints fan base, around who's coming in, why they're coming in, and the position Saints might be in right at this moment.
Yeah, there's a little bit, but I also think that's a lot because, not many of our fans know the academy as well as they kind of think. Delaney has been, he's been outstanding the 2 games he's played. He was one of our standout performers against Wigan when he came on, and he for me was someone who we was excited to see come into the squad, and he'd been in the 21-man squad for a good few weeks, and everyone was like, "Come on, is he starting?" The likes of Buckley, he only got picked up at 18 when he was playing for 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, so he's a bit later on the developing scale. So, but he's rightfully rated, and then some of the halfbacks as well. We've got another young lad in. We've got 2. We've got Moss and Roberts. They're 2 superb young players who would step up if ever there's an injury to Dodd or Lomax. So it's not necessarily a worry. It's kind of more, I suppose it is a bit of an anxiety because a lot of people haven't seen them as much or haven't heard much about them. But that's mainly due to the fact that the under-19s and reserve grade was through COVID. They never played many games, so a lot of these players are a couple of years, without training and without playing matches. So this is more to do with that. I think this is what's bringing on this anxiety. I've no doubt that whatever kids we pick will come out there and do a job. And like you say, with the Castleford game that we sent out the academy lads, and most of them had played 2 games in 2 years. That was it, and it's kind of like, it is the Saints' way of doing it. And there is that famous saying, never, ever write off the Saints. And I think that's important for Friday as well. It was important. The last time I said this, but the last time I wrote Saints off, like I have on Friday, I think Hull KR will win. The last time I wrote them off, they won a World Cup challenge. So hopefully that happens again.
Well, and to be fair, Johnny, I can appreciate why you were both games are in the same bracket.
Yeah,
I can appreciate, the most important games in rugby league, so it's understandable why you put them up there. But to be fair, James, Sam Wood's missing, so you'd put Louis Senior straight in there.
Yeah.
Jesse Sue missing. Matty Staunton's a replacement to us. Bachelor, you go Frankie Holton.
Yeah.
There's a doubt though over Sean Kennedy with his ribs, and Willie Peters mentioned Reece Kennedy with his hamstring. Take them 2 out, and then all of a sudden you've got big problems, haven't you? When you're trying to you're starting to put square pegs in round holes to cover them. I mean, they look likely to be available and ready to play, but when you get into that situation, you're starting to go, it's a bit more serious than we first thought.
Yeah, I think if Kenny Dowell's out, I think for me the obvious one to go in is Corey Hall. We obviously think he's got the ability to step up into that level, and he showed it at Wakefield. So, and they wouldn't have signed him otherwise. So yeah, I think he'll get a chance. But I think in the forwards it could be, that's when it does probably start to get a bit dicey. Because we have had a lot of stability in there. So the question is, if Kennedy's out, do you bring Luckley in as a start, and then or do you bring Hadley in? It does suddenly start. We do start to suddenly look a bit light in the forwards again. And you're thinking, well, actually, you're probably bringing in maybe Jimmy Kynast into on the bench, but gives you a bit of a lot lighter bench than we've had in previous games. So yeah, I mean, hopefully, 𝗕𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗏 and was it? We'll be all right.
Reece Kennedy.
Kennedy will be all right. Yeah.
That's worst case scenario, James. And by all accounts, Willie Peters said that they've looked after him in training and they should be there. It's still a very strong lineup. And do you know what? I think it's very telling. I didn't spot it on Good Friday, but about how Frankie Holton looked a bit of a full-on character in the celebrations, etc. And we talk about how one door closes and another one opens.
Yeah.
And I really think this is an opportunity now for Frankie Holton to really stake a claim for his place in the team. And what better time to do it than against the World Cup champions on Friday night at Craven Park. So I'm really looking forward to Frankie Holton playing, James. I mean, he should be playing. I can't see any reason why he wouldn't. He's a player who's not let the Robins down. He came from Featherstone, of course, and he's been a real shining light for not just Rovers, but I think for players who come from the Championship and come into Super League. And for me, he's a ready-made replacement for James Batchelor. And if he plays well, Batchelor might have a bit of a quandary on his hand whether he gets back into the team on post his suspension.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think going back to signing Holton from Featherstone, I think he came as a bit. I think the feeling at the time was he was going to be a bit of a squad player. I think he was on the bench in that first game against Wigan last year. But then when he got his chance, he just became he was absolute outstanding and fully deserved his place in the team. And I think in a way, it actually highlights probably the strength and depth we've got this season. That somebody of Frankie's quality is struggling to get in the 17. I think he started on the bench at the beginning of the season, didn't he? And I think was it against Leigh when he made his first start? We got 2 tries. Which game he got 2 tries in? But you're right. He's going to come in and he's got to bust a gut. I think to show to Peters that he is worth that spot. And and Peter's always talking about players are going to get picked on merit, and if you're doing a good job, then you're going to stay in that team. So if he plays, I think it'd be his place to lose with when Batchelor comes back.
And Johnny, if I'm right in thinking, you're coming to the game on Friday night.
Yes, first time at Craven Park as well.
So other than the sights of the M62 and the coach journey, what else are you looking forward to coming to on a Friday night in East Hull at Craven Park? What else are you looking forward to?
And it's going to be raining as well.
Yeah, well, at least that away end's no longer what it was. I've heard stories about that old away end. It's now Craven Street or something like that.
Yeah.
So looking forward to having a beer. That'll be a good sight, and I'm just excited to go again there. I always like boycotting clubs that I don't like, and I never used to like Hull KR because I thought they were very inward looking and very close-minded when it came to both expansion and the growth of the game. And ever since this change of business plan and business model, it's really, really, like I say, it's made me forgive a lot of the past, because now they're striving for a better future for the game. And I think it was time to release that boycott and go see some of my OKR mates that are made on Twitter, because apparently you all like praise.
Well, I'll tell you what, instead of a ticket in the North Stand, Johnny, you want to get in the East Stand, get in the middle of the terrace, and we'll hold you up aloft as a player. Almost like Joseph is an amazing technical dream coach. We'll put you up there as But no, seriously, I think it is a point worth making. And you know what, I'm sick of hearing about shit like Keighley Cougars and what you should do about, IMG and all. I think ultimately there's the game isn't held by IMG. The game will still exist, whatever IMG do with Super League. What that looks like and what it is different probably to what people might want it to be. But there's a realisation that not every single rugby league club exists can be professional. Not every rugby league club exists can make the profits that they want to make, etc., etc. And that's not unique to rugby league. That's sport. That's life.
Yeah.
Not everyone can earn what they want to earn, and at some point, there's got to be a realization that rugby league is a business. And I think what you've just alluded to there is, Johnny, is that what Rovers have done is they've grabbed the bull by the horns and said, well, if we want to be a prominent club that sustains itself and generates income, we've got to do something ourselves to make that happen.
I think Toronto genuinely are your saving grace. In that I think they gave your club a lot of ideas in how it should be done. You guys played them, didn't you, in the championship? Is that right?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, because I remember, I can't remember who did the interview. It might have been your owner, but he said he was captivated by the match day experience and how they bring the fans there and how they've brought them to the ground and with the beer garden in one of their stands, and then next thing, Craven Street's been created and he's realised that kind of there is money to be made in rugby league if you invest it in the right areas. And I think especially with a city like an area of the city like East Hull, you've got a lot of fans that will plough money into the club. And also if you make that transition to go, no, we want to be bigger on the grander scale, that then brings in better players, which makes the competition better, which then makes the competition more commercial to TV rights, which then brings in more money, because at the end of the day, if TV rights, without it, we won't be a full-time sport. There's not enough owners to bankroll it to do that. That's why Argyle pulled out of Toronto when COVID happened, and it's all like, if there's no money to be made, people won't just put the monies in for the sake of it. And like I said, I just think 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗲𝗏 are doing everything. I put a tweet out going, 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗏 should be the flagship for the IMG business model because of where they've come from and the kind of the sheer change of business plan that they've done, and the club really need to be praised for that, and they need to be kind of shown to clubs like Keighley, Featherstone that go, look, there's money to be made. There's a way to go about business, but they don't have the catchment area that Hull have, which is another problem for them. So they like you said, rugby league needs them clubs to be part-time. They need them to grow the amateur clubs, grow the amateur players, grow them up into a standard, and then to go up higher into the commercial zone of Super League, because rugby league can't survive without them clubs, and it can't survive, on that scale. There's just not the player development for that. The money needs to be going into the other areas of youth development, trickling up then to the game. It's
interesting, James, what Johnny said there, because when I look at Rovers, I don't think we're ever going to be a club that attracts necessarily 12,000 crowds every week, because even when you look back to the 80s, the 70s, I think even the Queensland game when we beat them, I think there was only about 6,000 or 7,000.
6,500 there,
yeah, which is incredible, really. But what I think Rovers have been really smart at is how to get more money out of the people who already go to the game, how to get more money out of the sponsors who already exist. Yeah, let's pull in new ones, but how can we? And I wonder if that's a model for Super League in general. So, Johnny, I mean, we talk about expansion. We talk about, right, let's put a team in Newcastle. Let's put a team in Dublin. Let's put a team on the fucking moon, But actually, do we do enough do we capitalise enough on the areas we're in?
Do we bollocks?
And I think that is not a market we do nothing already.
You look at Saints, Wigan, right? Wigan, Greater Manchester, Saints, Merseyside, right? Why are the games like Catalan? Why are we giving them to just clubs in the St Helens region? Why are we not going into the Liverpool region and going, hey, here's a free ticket to the game. Come watch Saints. Bring a family member, you and your dad or your parent or guardian or whatever. come, because all it takes is one good game of rugby league to get a fan hooked. And if you give them tickets, and then they'll tell their mates, and then they'll tell them, and then they go, oh, there's a great night out there, there's a great day, it's a great sport, and then you get more eyes on the screen that way. And you've got so many different catchment areas that's why I hate teams like Wakefield, Castleford, Featherstone that are all in and around the same. They've all got the same postcode. They're all in the same catchment area. They can do more for their fans to bring them to the game, like Hull are doing. Yeah. But then you've got teams like Wigan, like I say, that are in Greater Manchester, Salford going into the local community. Salford are doing that a lot more, but they haven't got the finances to go and do that even to a greater standard. So, and then Huddersfield is a cash-rich club. He will always pump his money into it because he loves the club. But what happens when he passes away? What eventually happens to that club? Because it can't be sustainable with the 3,000 fans they get. The season tickets are £250 each. That isn't a sustainable business model. So you look at clubs like that, they can be doing more in the football towns and cities to go and do it. And then you've got little villages in their surrounding areas. And that to me, it's vital for our sport that we give them more. That's what Beaumont's doing great at the minute. Although I'm not his biggest fan, because he did nearly liquidate the club and refuse to pay players, but that's a different story altogether. What he's doing right now with the match day entertainment is bringing in fans. And you know what? His ticket prices are more, but I think people will pay more to go for stuff like that. And it's really having a trigger effect with other clubs. Salford are trying to put on bands but not pay them. And then you've got like but you know what I mean? They're trying at least. And then you've got Saints have a band on every single game. We've got like a section of our home stand that's now been sectioned off as like a little band area. So you've got that. And then in teams are trying to do more to develop that matchday experience to make more money, and I think it's vital. And that Craven Street's obviously been a great addition for you guys because it's got local businesses involved, and it's great for the community as a whole, and it just brings it up.
Yeah, James can't help thinking that when Rovers got the ratings on Good Friday, we were trailblazers for getting all these bands on. I would have thought that going from the ratings at Craven Park on Good Friday, you got 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗄 playing at Leeds. I think they've got 𝗕𝗵𝗿𝗄𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 sense, what would you do?
What would I do? To do what? Get more people in?
Yeah, no, just IMG, rugby league, you know, all this expansion.
For me, it's difficult because although it sounds great to have different clubs in far-flung areas, I think without the foundations in the amateur game and the grassroots and people just having that interest, you're never going to get a critical mass. Talk about London again. How many times we've been to London? I think I'd love to see a successful team in London. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to see one there, but it's been tried over the years, and we nearly got there with the Broncos and Harlequin before that, as well before that. But for whatever reason, it's just not really taken off. And I think we still do need to focus in on where our strengths are. And our strengths are the community clubs. And I think what Rovers have done in the past with trying to get more people into the ground. Like I said, they're doing it with a match and experience, but even things like ticket offers. Last season we had members could get a ticket for £1 to bring other for the mates to come along. We had 10,500 people there against Warrington on a Friday night. And the Wigan game at the beginning of the season, they had members again could get discounted tickets for the family and friends. You had about 9,000 there. So for me, it's those sort of things. And as you said, once to get people come in, they might come in on a discounted ticket. But if they get hooked, and if they're at the game, they're buying merchandise, they're buying from the bars, they get hooked, they're going to come again. They're going to want to come again. And then, 2 or 3 games, full price, and then they're buying a season ticket, and then they're hooked.
Excellent, James. And do you know what? We haven't even managed to get round to talking about Will Tate joining Castleford Tigers. We hadn't even mentioned that the women's side beat Dewsbury 32 points to 16 on Good Friday, the same time that Rovers were playing at Hull FC. They're at home on Sunday against Sheffield Eagles. The reserves are in action at Castleford on Saturday. Johnny, you know what? I feel like this is a conversation that could go on and on and on.
Probably can, but I'm up early.
Yeah, but there's so much to talk about in rugby league. You know what? I think Friday is lining up to be a real humdinger. Do you know what?
Yeah,
I hope
can't wait.
the game does it justice, because I know there's a lot of anticipation in East Hull. We hadn't even talked about how good it is that they're not playing on Easter Monday, and that could have been a whole other podcast in its own right. I know for a fact if we had placed on Easter Monday, Rovers would have been absolutely on the knees in terms of because of the injuries, suspension, and it isn't what the game is about. It's about serving up the best possible product, and hopefully we'll see that.
And that got proven in the that got proven in the crowd numbers.
Some really good games that weekend, you know.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that is probably IMG's replacement for Magic Weekend. Yeah, that round of fixtures. Yeah, as much as people might like Magic Weekend, I think that is what they'll go to, because it allows them to focus on things like the Challenge Cup final, the Grand Final, away from Magic Weekend.
Well, yeah, but it's simple rebrands. They can have that, and then they can have a redemption round. So all it is the exact same thing, just, you know, it's just rebranding. It's rebranding rounds that are already happening. So rather than saying
NRL,
basically, yeah.
Anyway, lads, it's been a fantastic podcast. Johnny, I'm looking forward to speaking to you again. James, of course, you're my favourite guest-ish.
You say that's everybody, Johnny.
But of course, you guys have been listening to the Red Robin Podcast Weekly. A huge thanks to everyone who's tuned in on Facebook and YouTube, and everyone who's listening on the podcast. We are, of course, powered by Budget Size Autos Centre and 𝗓𝗔𝗂𝗍𝗂 Chartered Accountants. But for now, please remember, live, love, laugh and be happy.